received a personal invitation or email from me because you have really been a positive impact to my experience here at Trinity, and this is my way of saying thank you, giving back to you, and the investment that you all have done, which have contributed for making me be here, for the inspiration of actually setting me on a career path. Of course, most of all, thank you there. I thank you to Professor Gam, who has been everything more than. Everybody in this room, you are here because you have really made a significant impact in my training experience. So I'm going to talk a little bit of my dialect. I hope you all don't mind. I'll try to speak as slowly as possible and as not in English as possible so everyone can understand. So I can make myself feel a little more comfortable because I'm very nervous right now. So I want to move on. I want to start about firstly my transition from Trinidad and Tobago to University of the West Indies here at Trinity. I did my freshman year at the University of the West Indies, and when I came here, I met Marley, who was an alumni student from the year graduating in 2017. I met him in his study experience when he came to Trinidad, and I decided to do the study experience to Trinity in my sophomore year. Came here, fell in love with Trinity, met Professor Brown, met Angel, met all of you lovely people, and I just decided, Katie, everybody, I just decided, Chris, who has been helping me so much, I just decided to stay. And with the help of every one of you and your support, I was able to stay and I was able to pursue this career path of mine. So now I'm going to take this opportunity, show you my presentation, what I have done, and how I was able to transition to my career path. Seeing Professor Gam work with the community, the Hartford community, with the Brazilian tradition, the Brazilian heritage, that gave me an idea of what I wanted to do in music besides performance, and actually encouraging and impacting my culture and my career here in Hartford. So this is my thesis presentation. This all began at the summer of 2018. Professor Gam introduced me to Hartford Steel Symphony Orchestra, which is a Trinidadian steel symphony orchestra located in East Hartford. So I met with them over the summer, and with the help of the Center for Urban and Global Studies, Professor Chen, and his generous donation, I was able to commute back and forth to campus and have funds to do this project for the summer. So, without further ado, the history of the steel pan, its impact in Hartford, and the significant evolution.
Woo.
So, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of my paper. My paper is 88 pages long.
Okay.
I would really like applause to that because that was really hard. So I'm going to start about the history, starting back from as early as Christopher Columbus, which I also read in Professor Reggio's book. Christopher Columbus discovered Trinidad and Tobago in 1498. When he came into Trinidad and Tobago, he noticed on the northern range that there were 3 mountain peaks, and that reminded him of the Trinity. And so therefore he substituted the Trinity with the name Trinidad. Eventually in 1598, the Spanish colony invaded Trinidad. When they came there, they met the Arabs and the Arawaks. They were the natives there, which are the Spanish. They were natives of the island. And when they came with the diseases, they came with the smallpoxes and all the other epidemic, and these inhabitants, these indigenous people died out. Eventually, in 1797, the British and the French invaded Trinidad and decided to bring West African slaves over to the Caribbean to work in plantations such as sugar canes, citrus fruits, spices, cocoa, coconuts, rice fields. These were the plantations that the slaves were forced to work in. So when they came, they were also stripped of their drums, they were also stripped of their instruments. Now the drums in West Africa, West African tribes, their drums is not only a form of communication, it's their way of life. It's what they do everything with. Everything in terms of eating, in terms of having family time. Drums is how they connect. So, of course, the colonizers knew this and they stripped them of their drums. So they have no way of celebrating, no way of communicating. Eventually, they decided to build a resistance. So what they did, this is what you call bamboo. There's a part in Trinidad, in West Trinidad, it's called the Bamboo Cathedral. The island is filled with this. So the people decided with the hollow song that they would use these bamboo and bang at them as loud as possible to build a resistance and to draw attention to the colonizers that they had enough and they wanted their freedom. So they started this rhythmic session, or this rhythmic group called Tambu Bambu. Tambu Bambu, this is a demonstration of the Tambu Bambu heritage that came all the way back from 1797 when the slaves came. Tambu Bambu was used as this is a reenactment during the carnival festivities. They would roam the streets, they would take these irons, and they would bang these bamboos as loud as possible so that they could get the colonizers and the authorities' attention to set them free. As of course, you know, bamboos is not that durable. After a certain amount of time when they're cut, when they're plucked, that they eventually get weak and they die. So the bamboos begin to burst, and there was no more use for that hollow song. It was not effective anymore. So after they decided to use sticks, the sticks here are what you call stick fighting and Kambule riots. The Kambule riots and the stick fighting is a tradition from West Africa. It's what they do for dancing, and it was also used as a form of defense. This was also reenacted in the carnival festivities in Trinidad. This is what another form of creativity, another form of retribution that the slaves did during their time at Trinidad when they were brought to West Africa. I've interviewed a lot of people, some American Trinidadians here, and they told me about their experience witnessing these sticks fights. It's so brutal, it's very bloody. These are not normal broomsticks, these are very huge 4x4 sticks, and they would hit each other with it until blood is shed. It's a form of tradition, and this is what they would reenact every carnival season in Trinidad. So eventually, when the bamboos tear and there were no use for them, they decided to use other means. They would find tin cans, garbage covers, paint tins, biscuit tins, and they would just use that and parade the streets, continue to ban them to make that loud awareness of what's happening. They are in slavery, they need redemption, they need freedom. These are just some of the examples of the tin cans they would use on this side, and also the tire frames. They would use these old tire frames with irons and bang on them, causing that loud sound, causing that loud resistance. These are just some of the biscuit tins that they would use that actually is manufactured in Trinidad and Tobago, even up to today. This is what you call the rhythm section. So after they formed they came together with no communication. Remember, they couldn't communicate, they were from different tribes. They used these different rhythms from different tribes to come together to form a union against the colonizers. And they would call it the rhythm section. I will explain to you later how the rhythm section is applied to the orchestra of the Steelpan. So moving to the oil drums. After the Second World War, when the British were in charge, of course, the US Navy needed somewhere to dock their ships and their base tanks, so the British invited them to dock it at the port of Spain in Trinidad and Tobago. And after they were very contributive to the economy and the industry and the development of Trinidad infrastructure, and they also invented the oil drum so that they could fuel their ship tanks and their warships. And when they did that, some of them would dump the oil drums probably at the base, some of them would find it in the ocean. And believe it or not, the people, the slaves of Trinidad and Tobago, would take these oil drums and just experiment with them, like what could they do with this empty use of waste, this empty use of material? How could they materialize this into something effective, into a kind of retribution, what they want to do with it? So they eventually started to shape these drums. So this is one of the images, this is a very old picture. It's called a concave shape, where they push the drum outward in terms of the surface of the drum, and I'll show you more about the surface and how they actually do that. So the duduk was the first pan that was invented. The duduk means that they use, you see the entire oil drum here, and they came up with the idea, still these people are very unknown, they came up with the idea, hey, what if we sink it into a convex shape and we add a different note to it? We could get two different rhythmic patterns, and we can add melodies and pitch to it. So this was the first pan invented called the duduk pan, and they have the low and the high notes in it. The low is considered as the C note, and then the high was the other note, the tone above, which is the D note. So the gauges of the drum is 1.2 milliliters. Now believe me when I tell you, this gauge gives the perfect sounding pitch. Without this gauge, there's a different tone to the instrument. This gauge is really important to the effectiveness of the instrument. So each drum that has been made uses a specific gauge to get that quality of sound. So this is how the process is done. This is going to get really exciting now. So the process is starting at the surface. So you see, this is how the drum comes. You see the surface on it. Each of these lines, and believe me, these people, these Africans, my people, they were so intelligent, they didn't have any physics, they didn't have any musical background, they didn't have any math education behind them. But they found ways to make this instrument so unique, so incredible, so engineering aspect of it. These lines that you see here are guidelines on how they make the instruments. So the first line will be 1.5 inches, and every engineer or every maker or tuner would arrange to suit them. These lines are guidelines in terms of shaping the notes, and I'll show you a demonstration at the end of it. The indentation of the notes in the pan, these are what you can't interfere with. So these lines help you and guide you along that process as you sink it. So this is a tenor pan. You can see how deep it goes inside. This is about 8 inches deep. So they would take a 6 to 7 pound hammer. They would take this hammer right here, 6 to 7 pound hammer, and they would bang on these drums continuously until it eventually lowers to 8 inches deep. And this is the first sinking process of it. Right? This is just some of my work that I did in West Hartford over the summer with Kelvin Griffin. I'll get into more of that. He is the arranger and the founder of the Hartford Steel Symphony. So these are the lines I was talking about, the different measurements, and this is how deep it gets to. This is the end product of just the tenor pan alone. I'll get to the other orchestras in a bit. So moving on, these are just some of the instruments that they use. Metric ruler, electric tape, template. A template is used to draft, which meaning that each note is laid in a specific place in the instrument. There's a specific standard setup of the instrument. So you need a template, you need a draft, you need a compass. A compass is to show the measurement, the exact measurement of each note, which is very accurate and very important when it comes to putting sound in this instrument. Right? Iron compass, a hacksaw. What the hacksaw is for, of course, you can see was the entire drum. The hacksaw is used to cut the drum to a certain level. This skirt of the instrument is so important to the sound and the acoustics. And like I said, these people had no idea what they were doing and they weren't educated, but yet they came up with this incredible invention without any mathematical abilities. This is called a strobe, an electronic strobe. Now, before the strobe came in, the electronic strobe, which of course would be more modern century, back in those days, in the 20th century, they would use a piano to tune the instrument. So I've heard stories about persons who just play a C note and run all the way across to the other room and try to remember that song, to tune that same C note. And they did this for hours and for days and for nights and for weeks until they eventually established this instrument. But now today, thankfully to modern technology, we have the standard strobe, the electronic strobe. So the strobe is of course a 44 Hz, 440 Hz frequency. It also has a chromatic built-in, meaning that you could tune from a C to a C sharp to a D. It also incorporates a pitch of each note. It also shows the frequency with the lines here, so each line can show a different frequency of the chords. So if I'm having C and I'm building a C chord which will go to E, it will also show me in a final line the E, which is the harmony of that. Right? It's a 4-octave range, meaning it has a wide range from a level 1 octave all the way up to a level 4 octave. So this is just some of my practical work that I did in East Hartford this summer, working with Mr. Griffin, actually learning to make these pans for myself and the work that I put into. Of course, the measuring tape to measure for the drafting, and of course, the centering, that's another thing I want to talk about. So in other words, this pan would not be equally sounding balanced if you did not find the center of the note. How do you find the center of a diameter, right? Professor Chris. So this is my math professor. So how do these people who have no mathematical background, how were you able to find the center of these notes? And it's incredible. There are different ways of doing it. Some of them find different measurements. 13 inches from the rim, which is the outside of the note. 13 inches on each side, you make a box. You draw an X in it to find that center point, and you draw your lines coming down to that point. And that's how we find the middle of the pan. Like I said, these people had no idea what they were doing. And this is what came out of it. This is the end result. So So I'll move on a bit. This is the drafting of it now. So the drafting, he's using his compass, he's using his markers, he's using chalk. This is the process in having these lines so you can see where the guidelines are in order to make this instrument, in order to know that you're in the right place. So I just want to show a little quick demonstration. This is just a little video of how the counter sink in. After the sink in, the drafting, you have the counter sink in. So he's taking his 7 to 8 pound hammer now and look at what he's going to do. See the lines there?
See it there.
So he's only working within the lines. Now as you can see, the drum is one level, right? And he's using these lines to guide him. So as he hammers with these lines, the notes in the middle eventually begin to rise, eventually begin to come up. And that's how you get these indentations. That's how you get the sound coming out of it. But every time he bangs, he puts sound into his drum. Because that's how the metal works. Even in the little box in the center here, there's a note. You notice that's a sink in the note. That means to get an indentation. So with him hammering around these indentations, around the lines, that note will eventually rise up and have its own sound. Right, so I'll move on from here. This is just another example of his counter sinking after he moves on to the next stage. This is get into the fine-tuning parts now. So grooving. Grooving is one of the most technical and difficult parts of making this instrument. So you see these little grooves, these little edges here in the pan. This is what grooving comes from. So they use a screwdriver and they cut it in half. And that flat surface of the screwdriver, they take a 1 pound hammer and they cause indentation in a rhythmic pattern in it. What that does is it separates every note from each other because this is a one surface instrument. Sound is traveling all through the instrument, and in order for you to separate these notes, you need to cause indentation in every note. So this grooving protects the note within itself, and it protects the note from other notes out around it. So this is the grooving. This is one of the most difficult, and this is a part of the grooving process. Now comes the burning. After everything is done, you groove it and everything, you have to burn, you have to temper the instrument. If you don't, you will not get this end product. 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Some people use a ring stove, some people use wood fire back then. I used to work for a company when I learned it, they used a blowtorch. This is what the blowtorch looks like. So they used to light it, they connect it to a gas stove, they light the blowtorch, and they fire it up. If you notice that there's a blue color in this, now this is how the drum must be. It must look like this in order for you to know that the drum is fully burned. It must produce that blue color, otherwise the drum cannot be tuned. So we're moving on to the tuning process. This is just Kelvin tuning his tuning process, showing you examples about how it's tuning. I'll go into the coloring and the tuning. So the chroming, of course you know what chroming is. This is an end product of chroming. This is how a chroming pan looks like, and actually this metallic electronic plate complements the sound of this instrument. We also have the powder coating. So when it says here, the powder coating is the electroplastic connector, so it's like the negative connecting to the positive. The powder, it has magnetic positive particles in it, and it connects with the tenor pan. So the tenor pan is hooked up to a negative grounding, and it connects, it clings to the instrument. And when it clings to the instrument, they put it in this grand oven and bake it for 355 degrees. And it comes out with that end product, that glossy looking color. This is how the powder coating, which is a new developed coloring that comes into the steel pan. This is just the end product of the steel pan. This is how it looks. It's exactly the same standard and setup as you see here. So we're going to go into the research now. We're almost there, we're almost there. So this is Kelvin Griffith. Kelvin Griffith, he's from Trinity and Tobago, he's from Sandy Grande. Sorry, he's from Diego Martin. Apologies, he's from Diego Martin. He founded and started the Hartford Steel Symphony Orchestra in 1989 here in Hartford, East Hartford. Ever since then, it's been a non-profit organization. He goes about the community, recruiting kids, helping kids, playing for the community, showing the community, giving back to the community, and making something positive for the community. And these are some of the contributions that they've made to the West Indian Parade that we have in Hartford, downtown in August. They also play for the Labor Day festivities that they have in New York. They are a very big contribution and representative of the Hartford community. These are just some of the members of the orchestra that I met with during my research. And this is just a clip of how they do their rehearsal. I hope you enjoyed it. It's like a little musical background. This is what you call drilling in Trinidad, meaning that it's just constant practice till you get it perfect. So after the dodo, remember we talked about the two notes, right? The dodo, which have the C and the D drum. So now they became more inventive and decided to add more notes into the drum. And this is the template that they had after, where they added a C, they added a G, they added a B. And the process goes on from there. After that, we go into the tenor part, which is here. So we have the pioneers, which is Anthony Williams and Ellie Manette is on the right, and Anthony Williams is on the left. This is the left, on the left diagram here, is the standard instrument, the standard pan, the standard tenor pan for Trinidad and Tobago. So those of you who know music, you can see the layout of this. So as you can see, the C note down here, this is called a fourths and fifths pan. The reason why they call it a fourths and fifths is because from a C to a G is a fifth, and right next to that, from a G to a D is a fifth. From a D to A is a fifth. And you go anti-clockwise and you get all fifths. But if you go clockwise, let's start from the C and A to F, it's a fourth. And if you go from an F to B flat, it's a fourth. And if you go from the B flat to E flat, it's a fourth. And this is how I remember my intervals. And like I said, these people had no musical backgrounds, and yet they still invented an instrument that is so musically gifted, so musically impacted. These are just another background of the instrument. So this is called the double tenor, which is right under this instrument. So it is an alto range. In a full orchestra, it's an alto range. It has from an F3 octave to a B5 octave. 30 notes in this instrument. And then you go down from the double tenor, you have the contralto double seconds. And then from an F3 to a C sharp 5, and it has 32 notes. All these are part of the instrument, and it gets even bigger. So we have the tenor. This is considered as part of the tenor range in an orchestra. This is the guitar, the double guitar pans. Ranges from a C sharp 2 to a G sharp 4, 20 notes. Then we go down to the triple cellos. Triple cellos are also a tenor-based voice range. It ranges from a B2 to a B flat 4. It also has 24 notes. Tenor bass is the baritone in the instrument, which is F1 to C3, 24 notes, and then we have finally the bass, which is B1 to A flat 2, 18 notes. This is comprised of the full orchestra of the Steelpan, and it plays every range in an orchestra. So pneumatic hammers, this is where modern technology comes in. Pneumatic hammers is production that was invented so that it could help speed up the process of making these instruments. So what a pneumatic hammer does, it is connected to a compressor, air compressor, which vibrates the hammer and causes a faster rhythmic hammering. So if I was to hammer an instrument, I was to hammer a steel drum, bang, bang, as we saw before, that pneumatic hammer could make one of that hammering 5 times. So it's rapid, it's just rapid all around, and it produces more instruments at the same time. And this has been a contribution to the productivity of the instrument. So now we reach to the orchestra. You see how large this is, and the entire photo can even pick up because it goes all the way down. This is what you call Carnival Tuesday in Trinidad and Tobago. This is one of the big bands. These are over hundreds of people who perform in these bands. And the ranges like I mentioned before, they play all those instruments. This is what you call a full orchestra. This is what you deal with. Now they have it up outdoors because imagine 100 of these instruments, you could go deaf. So these performances are outdoors, but the sound is so incredible when you hear all these different ranges and all these different backgrounds of instruments come together and make a full orchestra. The G-pan is an invention that came out of the steel pan. So the G-pan is a thicker gauge which produces a lower sounding pan. So this is one of the evolutions that came from this instrument. And then we have the hand pan, which was invented in the eastern part of the world. So the Europeans, and I think it was also the Chinese, that they came up with the hand pan. So the hand pan was a derivative from the tenor pan, and you play with your fingers. It's very melodious. As you can see the hole right here, this is how you tune it. I actually had the privilege of tuning one and even playing one. So the sound comes out of here, and you tune it through this hole right here. You put it on your lap, you sit down, and you play with your fingers. It's really incredible sound. And then last and not least, we have the fire pan. The fire pan, which most people in Trinidad and Tobago would not consider as a steel pan, reason being is because it's electronic, and it's very similar to the keyboard instrument. It sounds like a keyboard, it's electronically connected, and you get a keyboard sound from it. So comparing that with the steel, most people prefer the steel over the fire pan, but this is just another evolution that came out of the steel pan. So just to wrap up, I would just like to share with you this YouTube video that I made when I was doing my research over at East Hartford. I posted it on YouTube. And it's an hour and 22 minutes long, as you can see. Just an introduction of all the documentary that I learned, that I discovered. All the information that I discovered over the entire summer period, learning about this instrument, working with Kelvin and his orchestra. And this is just I just want to show you a little bit of what I put together.
Good afternoon, Mr. Griffith.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing today?
All right.
So, could you just introduce yourself?
My name is Kelvin Griffith. Born in Trinidad.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Cheryl.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for doing this interview with me. Do you mind introducing yourself?
My name is Cheryl Griffith, and I'm one of the members of the History of Steelpan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Griffith. Could you kindly introduce yourself?
My name is Kyle Griffith. I'm currently a student at Manchester Community College, and I'm the second pan player in Hartford Steel Symphony.
Good evening, Kayla. How are you? How are you today?
I'm good.
Alright. Do you want to start off by introducing yourself?
Sure. I'm Kayla, and I'm part of Hartford Steel Orchestra, and I'm also part of Steel Orchestra.
Good evening, Miss Hanson.
Good evening.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Do you mind introducing yourself?
I'm Danielle Hudson. I'm going to be an upcoming junior at Trinity, new member of Hartford Steel Symphony.
And I'd just like to go to the end where I went to an event that they performed at. in East Hartford, and how the community really enjoyed that performance. So that kind of wraps up my presentation. I would just like to show you quickly, very quickly, what my thesis looks like. So I'm going to hold this out because this has been a lot of hard work. This has been a lot of tireless nights, a lot of was kind of explain. But this is something I'm truly proud of, and every time I talk about it, it's something that I never envisioned that I'll be coming here to do. It's something I never envisioned that I'll be embarking on this journey, especially being here at Trinity, being here in the US. I'm definitely going to donate this to the Watkinson's Library because I was an employee there and I've worked with great people there, and I think that this resource is very useful, very helpful there. I'm definitely going to donate that to them, all 88 pages. So you're definitely going to get that. I just wanted to, in case, for those of you who didn't know, just kind of show you an idea of what Trinidad and Tobago looks like. So this is it. This is in South America, down to the Lesser Antilles of the Caribbean. And it's 1,914 square miles. And the sister isle, which is next to it, which was discovered in 1688 to 1698, which looks like this here, kind of looks like a cigar, which is over here. You know, it looks like a cigar. She's from Tobago, so she would know. That is 160 square miles in diameter. So as that wraps up my presentation, again, I would like to thank each and every one of you. Angel, I mean, I can name it, Katie, I can name all of you guys. Thank you all so much. I'm extremely happy. As most of you probably don't know, I'm 30 years of age, and I've always felt so lost on this campus so many times because I just couldn't find that connection. And I've connected with all of you special people, and it really means a lot for you to be here. And as I leave Trinity campus, I got accepted into Tufts. Ethnomusicology at Tufts, and it's Professor Dam for his help and for his continued support. I appreciate that. So with this in mind, as I close, I'd just like to say my name is Kimani Bishop. I'm an aspiring ethnomusicologist, and this is Steelpan. Thank you. Oh, sure. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Questions, please. Anything. Questions. Anybody. Just sure, no problem.
So one is just an observation. I think it's really, it's great that you've brought this panorama, of bringing, Trinidadian Trinidadian tradition, yet here we are in a shed behind somebody's house in East Hartford, and something's happening there, and so digging into that and really sensing it. Just one observation was, isn't it interesting how it's still cultural collision in terms of here you have hammers and heat that are in pounds and Fahrenheit, yet you're using a metric ruler.
I mean, who knows, one day maybe something could come out and develop on that where we wouldn't need a metric ruler, some invention, because as you have seen with the pneumatic hammer, that's such a great invention that they can rapidly make so many instruments in that short space of time.
Yeah.
So,
and just two other things. One about the G-pan.
Right.
Is just, as I understand it, it's an instrument that was developed by engineers at University of West Indies.
West Indies, that's correct.
And the other thing is that they had made a mold, and the whole idea is to basically just stamp it in one thing. So you have this superior tuned pan that basically cuts out the whole individuality and creativity of the tuners. And so I think that's a real important thing to think about as you move on to your master's discussion. And then the other thing is looking at the interviews. And this is just hypothesis and just something that would be really fun to explore. Would be, how would those interviews be different if it wasn't somebody from Trinidad asking Trinidadians those questions? So
That's interesting.
anyway. No other questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate your comment. Sure, Professor Miller, did you?
It's worth mentioning, I think, Kimani, that the Hartford has the longest running West Indian parade in the United States. I mean, it's been running consistently since 1960s, 64, I believe. I'm not quite sure of that year, longer than Labor Day. And it's a very interesting festival because in style, it's Trinidadian, but in substance, it's largely Jamaican because there are a lot more Jamaicans in Hartford than Trinidadians. So the role of the steel orchestra, which is Trinidad-based, I think is really crucially important in the history of that festival, and kind of uniquely so. So I just think that that's something sort of worth paying attention to. And then I had a question. Did you work in Panland? Is that where you worked?
Yes, I worked at a pan factory, the only pan factory in Trinidad and Tobago after leaving high school. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, so I worked at Panland for 10 years, learning how to make this instrument, learning how to craft and tune this instrument, learning everything I knew about music until eventually I decided to go back to school.
I wanted to follow that up with just a couple of things. The owner of Panland,
Professor Michael Cooper.
yes, Michael Cooper's niece was a Trinity student and graduated from Trinity. So that's how I first met him and how we first knew about Panland. But Panland as a factory for everybody here is really very special because the pans are not only individually tuned, but each tuner puts his initials on the rough tuning of a pan, so that when it comes back for fine tuning, it comes back to the same tuner. So it is really, and now it's a factory in deep trouble. So the idea of protecting these craft-oriented industries that really take the personal pride of their workers seriously in this current climate is, I think, very important. So I think we should all be aware that this factory is not right now in a very stable financial position, and that is too bad.
Thank you, Professor Rachel. Professor Platt.
Kimani, thank you. I learned so much from the presentation. I wanted to ask you, or just invite you to say a few words about the repertory, how it is that Steelpan orchestras chose the songs, the pieces that they wanted to play. So you started off with it, if I'm not mistaken, an American jazz standard,
yes, so
right?
I should have mentioned that. That was by Glenn Miller from 1957, which was on jazz BCS. Usually in an orchestra, in a steel band orchestra, an arrangement or a selection of music is chosen by the arranger or by the leader of the band. As you can see, this instrument can play any genre of music. That all depends on the arranger, it all depends on the leader of the band. Now, what they do as an arranger, they don't exactly take that music and just apply it to the instrument, because the instrument could do so much more things. So they add something what we call, of course you know, the syncopation, and also they would use a lot of Caribbean rhythms to it, when they would add chromatic scales, and they would just be so innovative with it and make it so unique and changing like different ranges, different octaves. So it's also musically based with it. So it really varies. It varies on all different genres of music, and it's all up to the arranger, what the arranger feels. A lot of arrangers say, well, I don't know music, I just go by what I feel and what I heard and what I saw. And you wouldn't believe the fascinating music that comes out from these arrangers who have no musical background and no musical understanding, but they know how things sound and they know what harmonies go together. So that's how the music, they choose these repertoires, by the songs that they know what they're used to, and they go with that, and they go with what they feel, and they put it into writing. Any more questions?
I have one. This is a question that can probably just be answered yes or no. Since the word song has been thrown out, does any of this music actually ever have singing that's part of it?
Singing? I've never seen that before.
Okay. So no chorus, it's, you know, like you have the wonderful orchestra and then a chorus in the back.
Because, I mean, it would be kind of difficult for a person to be singing
over
with
that.
all of these steel drums behind them. Maybe if it was just the tenor pan.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, if it was just the tenor pan and they're doing a performance solo, definitely yes.
Just to jump in on that, many of the songs, well, basically the whole process for developing songs for the Panorama Steelpan competition come from songs that are on the radio. And so then what happens is they blow these up into 8-10 minute arrangements. And sometimes what they'll do is if there's a popular chorus, then like tell me where the hammer gone, right? So they'll play the first part of the melody and everybody will respond, where the hammer gone, right? And so there is some vocal interaction, but it's little snippets.
I add a little bit to that. During the carnival season, the arrangements or the music that is made for carnival, these steel pan arrangers use that music to broaden it and to add in their own melodies or their own ideas. So people know these songs during the carnival season and they apply it to the steel pan, which makes the festivities more enjoyable, which contributes to the carnival festivity. So in terms of that aspect where the voice comes in, definitely yes.
Thank you.
Yes, no problem.
You might want to point out that for Carnival, the songs have to have been written that year.
Yes.
So every Carnival tune is a new tune. That is, it may be taken from a soca or from a very popular piece of music, but that music has to have been written within the last year. That's not true of the festival, and it's not true of performances otherwise. But when they're playing just for Panorama, they're always playing new
Yeah,
songs.
they play by rote. Most times we find steel orchestras play by rote. They don't use music. Some of them can't use music. They just play by rote. They play by ear.
And Urs just pointed out, thinking about Jimmy Buffett, that there's voice with steel pan in most of his songs.
Yeah.
And to make our local connection, Robert Greenidge, who plays with Jimmy Buffett, is our director, Curtis Greenidge's uncle. So it's a small world.
Yeah. It's a lot to fit into 20 minutes. I mean, you're interested? Read my thesis. I have all the information there. Everything in detail is there. It's all there.
He's going to be selling
Again,
copies.
any more questions?